I never imagined a simple act of kindness would bring a billionaire to his knees. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a Monday, just like any other. The coffee shop rattled with the morning rush. I stood there, my hands trembling as I wrapped them around my cup, feeling the warmth seep into my skin. The smell of roasted beans filled the air around me, yet my heart felt heavy, a dull ache in my chest. Across the room, his presence caught my eye. Nathaniel Kincaid. The name echoed in my mind like a whispered secret. He was a giant in the business world, a billionaire with the kind of power that turned heads. But that day, he looked like a ghost. His usual sharp suit hung loosely on his frame. I noticed the deep circles under his eyes, the way his lips pressed into a thin line. I could see it, the weight of the world sat upon his shoulders. My gaze held steady as I watched him. The space between us felt electric. I wasn't just a waitress in that moment, I was a witness to whatever storm raged within him. The patrons around continued their conversations, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. Laughter echoed, but I felt a shiver, a sense of unspoken tragedy. My heart raced, a drum echoing in the silence I felt shrouded us both, the stumbling waitress before me, an ordinary girl just trying to make ends meet. My family needed me. I felt their struggles amplify within me. My younger brother relied on me after our dad lost his job. My mother worked herself into the ground, her hands cracked and worn. I was the hope, the light. And yet, here I was, distracted by a broken billionaire whose fortune couldn't buy him peace. Suddenly, a commotion erupted. A woman shrieked, and I turned to see a man fall, clutching his chest in agony. The coffee shop fell silent. I rushed forward, my heart pounding like a hammer. I kneeled beside him, panic gripping my throat. I placed my hands on his shoulder, my impulse to help, but through that chaos, my eyes caught Nathaniel's. For a second, everything faded into a blur. I held my breath. He was moving closer. Something flickered in his gaze: curiosity, urgency, desperation. As I tried to comfort the fallen man, Nathaniel knelt beside me, our hands inches from each other. "Call 911. He barked, his voice sharp, cutting through the stillness. My chest tightened. Here was this titan of industry, breaking under the weight of humanity. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my act of kindness would extend beyond this moment. But everything in that instant felt pivotal. Was Nathaniel craving connection? Hope? Or was he running from something deeper? And then it happened. He turned to me, desperation turning his eyes into glassy pools. "Please, he can't die here. Not on my watch." The coffee shop, once a backdrop to my mundane existence, transformed into a stage for our intertwined fates. I clutched his forearm, the warmth of his skin radiating into me, igniting something I had never expected. In that fleeting moment of urgency, before the sirens wailed through the silence, I saw a flicker of change in his expression, a hint that this banal encounter was about to unravel something monumental. What would it mean for him, for me? Would kindness truly bring him to his knees? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The paramedics arrived within minutes, rushing into the coffee shop with urgency and purpose that pulsed through the air, punctuating the thick tension. They swiftly took control, gently moving me aside while assessing the man on the floor. As their hands worked, my heart sank. The chaos faded into a distant hum, my world shrinking down to this one moment, where life hung by a thread. I turned away, my mind racing, grappling with a surge of emotions: fear, helplessness, and a flicker of hope that fought to break through the darkness. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw Nathaniel, his face a mask of anxiety, his fingers raking through his disheveled hair. I had witnessed countless people in distress, but something about him made this whole ordeal feel personal. It was as if we were both staring into the abyss, tethered by an invisible thread of shared anguish. After what felt like an eternity, the paramedics succeeded in stabilizing the man, wheeling him away on a stretcher. Somehow, amid the potential tragedy, Nathaniel's eyes found mine, drawing me into an unspoken understanding and acknowledgement that the facade of our everyday lives had cracked, revealing this raw, fragile humanity beneath. It shook me to my core. "Hey," he said, his voice a whisper as the chaos around us dissipated. There was a tremor in his words that neither of us could ignore. "Thank you for helping." The sincerity in his eyes sparked a warmth that spread through me, a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. "It's what anyone would do," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "He'll be okay." But even I wasn't entirely convinced. The weight of the moment seeped around us, thick as syrup. Nathaniel nodded, the faintest hint of a smile breaking through his turmoil. It softened his features, revealing a part of him that yearned for connection, a small flame flickering beneath the shadows that loomed over him. "You're more than just a waitress," he affirmed, and his words wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. And then it met his wasn't just a moment of kindness for him. He was reaching out, asking for something deeper, something beyond the surface of our absurd social divide. But as I stood there, caught in the intensity of his gaze, reality crashed over me like a thunderstorm. The stark reminder of my burdens echoed in my mind, my family, my responsibilities. Just as the lingering tension began to dissipate, the coffee shop door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. My heart sank further. It was Eric, my brother's best friend, and an unwelcome reminder of how difficult things had become at home. He caught sight of me and made his way over, sudden concern carving lines into his youthful face. "Is everything all right?" he asked, glancing around as if expecting the chaos to return. I forced a smile that felt as fragile as glass. "Just a medical emergency. Everything's okay now." Glancing back at Nathaniel, I saw his expression shift, a flicker of discomfort. He was a man used to maintaining control, and in that moment, he felt exposed. "Can we talk?" Nathaniel asked gently, his gaze piercing through the veil of normalcy that Eric's arrival had attempted to restore. There was desperation hidden behind that question, and my heart raced with the prospect of stepping closer to the storm that surrounded Nathaniel. But Eric's presence loomed heavily. "I should head back," he said, suddenly shifting as if sensing the gravity of the confrontation unfolding. "No, stay," I urged, my voice turning uncertain. I need to," Nathaniel interjected softly. "It's fine. We can speak later." And while the words made sense, part of me felt the weight of an opportunity slipping away. With an abrupt nod, Eric stepped back, still too suspicious for comfort, and Nathaniel and I stood amidst the chaos, ripe with unspoken words and mutual wounds. What was happening here? Where would this connection lead? As Nathaniel lingered near, the air between us pulsated with an energy I had never experienced. There was both an unease and undeniable electricity, a moment poised on the precipice of something monumental. Could I truly open up to him, revealing the depths of my burdens, and trust that this billionaire, in his unraveling, might also lead me to my own form of healing? But before I could respond, Nathaniel turned abruptly, his expression clouding as he gazed out the window. "I can't do this," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper, the look on his face raw with something deeper, something I couldn't quite understand, and just like that, the moment shattered, leaving me breathless in its wake. He took a step back, distancing himself from the electricity that had ignited between us, and I felt as if I were losing a delicate thread that connected our fates. I stood frozen, watching him retreat, my heart plunging. What had I done? Had I missed my chance? A voice broke the silence, unfamiliar and chilling. "You'll regret this decision, Kincaid." With those words, Nathaniel turned, panic etched across his features. The stranger's presence filled the space with menace, and in that split second, I realized things were about to spiral further away from my control. As the dread settled in my stomach, a new fear unfurled, a winter chill sweeping through the warmth we had only begun to forge. What was it that Nathaniel was truly running from? And would I have the courage to uncover all he had hidden away? The walls we had both built were crumbling, and before I could comprehend the danger lying ahead, I felt the first tremors of a storm brewing between us. The scattered sounds of bustling patrons returned, but my heart thrashed heavily against the backdrop of quiet disbelief. I stood rooted to the spot, fighting the urge to pursue Nathaniel, while the stranger's words echoed ominously in my mind. Who was he? What did he know about Nathaniel that made him loom with such dark certainty? Eric, still hovering awkwardly near, glanced between the two of us, confusion spreading across his features. What was that about? He asked, his brow furrowed with genuine concern, yet I couldn't find the words. The storm was brewing, and my instinct was to shield him from whatever darkness this moment had stirred. Just some random guy, I said, a feeble attempt to shrug it off, but deep down, I knew the weight of it coiling tightly in my chest. Glancing back toward the door, I half expected Nathaniel to re-enter, his eyes alight once again with determination, yet the cafe felt inexplicably hollow without him, mirroring the absence of hope I now harbored. Shouldn't we call someone? Eric pressed, his loyalty to Nathaniel momentarily eclipsing his role as my brother's friend. I can check around outside. No, I protested, a sharp edge to my tone, fueled by my instinct to protect Nathaniel, to guard the fragile connection we had forged just moments ago. Let's just leave it. I'm sure he's fine. A silence stretched, heavy with unspoken tension. Eric opened his mouth to protest, but instead, he nodded, relinquishing the matter. All right. But if something's off, nothing is off, I asserted, though my pulse quickened at the uncertainty swirling within me. It's just a strange coincidence. But it felt more sinister than that. The kind of unfortunate entanglement that lingers in the shadows and finds its way into the light when least expected. With Nathaniel gone, I dedicated myself to the mundane rhythms of the cafe, pouring coffee and refilling napkin dispensers, dutifully serving familiar faces who remained oblivious to the whirlwind that had just coaxed through the door. My mind, however, was elsewhere. My thoughts spiraled back to Nathaniel, his expression, the flicker of desperation in his voice, the vulnerability that threaded through it all, mingling with the unease that festered beneath. As the shift wore on, the evening light dimmed outside, casting a warm glow through the cafe windows. It was in those moments I caught my solace, an unexpected kindness that found its way to me, like fragments of an invisible thread weaving comfort into the chaos. One of my regular customers, Mrs. Anderson, an elderly woman with silver hair and a penchant for sweet pastries, approached me with a gentle smile. "Dearest, are you all right?" she asked, her soft voice wrapping around me. "You seem a little lost today." The warmth of her concern seeped into my skin, and for a brief moment, I felt the weight of the world lift. "Just a long day, I suppose," I replied, offering her a sincere smile. "Then you must take care of yourself," she insisted, reaching into her purse and sliding a crumpled $5 bill into my palm. "For some self-care, dear. You deserve a treat." I blinked, taken aback by her gesture. "Mrs. Anderson, you don't need to nonsense. You remind me of my granddaughter," she interrupted, her eyes shimmering with affection. "Why, I've seen the way you treat everyone here. You bring a light to this place. It's time you allow others to brighten your day." My throat tightened with emotion, and a delicate seed of hope took root in the warmth of her words. Perhaps not all connections faded into shadows. Perhaps there was still kindness to unearth, even within the chaos that enveloped me. As I headed toward the kitchen to gather a small treat for myself, the doorbell chimed once more, and my heart stopped, a sense of foreboding creeping back into the space I had just filled with light. I paused, half turning to glance toward the entrance, praying that it would be Nathaniel. That somehow, life had a way of blending our paths again. Instead, a tall figure stepped in who I hadn't anticipated. It was his assistant, Lydia, an air of concern clouding her usually sharp demeanor. She scanned the room for Nathaniel, her expression shifting when her gaze finally landed on me. "Where's Nathaniel?" she asked, urgency thrumming in her voice. My heart plummeted. I don't know," I stammered, confusion erupting. "He was just here." Before I could complete my thought, Mrs. Anderson's words echoed through my mind as Lydia pressed on with a hint of panic. "He's not at the office. We were expecting him for a meeting and he hasn't responded to any calls." "Are you sure he's all right?" A surge of anxiety tightened my chest. The world around me blurred as understanding sank in. Whatever Nathaniel was running from was now demanding to be addressed. A storm brewing far beyond my control, and I stood on the edge, heart racing, desperate to grasp hold of the unraveling strings that tied us together. "Where do you think he could have gone?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know," she whispered, and in the flickering glow of the cafe lights, I felt the shadows closing in once more, threatening to consume us all. With fear as my guide, I stepped forward, realizing then that this storm we were in it together. And whatever lay ahead was a challenge I could no longer face alone, but the revelation that washed over me next set my heart racing anew. Could I really dive into Nathaniel's world and confront the truths that would not just change him, but unravel everything I thought I knew about myself? Lydia grabbed her phone, refocusing, determination igniting her features. "We need to find him," she declared, and as I nodded resolutely, I faltered for just a moment. What if he wasn't ready for the hard truths? What if my stepping into his life meant opening Pandora's box? But we had to move. And as we braced ourselves for the chaos ahead, I realized with chilling clarity that the storms we created for ourselves always sought to break us, and perhaps we were on the cusp of understanding just how far our fights could lead us. The streets were alive with the clamor of people rushing home, enveloped in the golden glow of streetlights flickering to life against the encroaching dusk. Lydia's urgency became my own, and that fire ignited a sense of determination in my bones. As we stepped outside the cafe, I fought to hold on to the thread of confidence that had sprung from Mrs. Anderson's kind words, even as doubts surfaced. What rescue could we offer a man like Nathaniel? "Let's check his favorite haunts," Lydia suggested, scanning the skyline as if it would provide answers. It struck me that I had spent more time attempting to decipher the depths of Nathaniel's heart than the city that cradled him. We traipsed through the streets, navigating the familiar pathways that had normally been punctuated by Nathaniel's laughter. Each corner we turned felt heavier than the last, memories coiling around me like ribbons of doubt. We peered into bookstores, local bars, and even the secluded park where Nathaniel often sought solace amid the chaos of his life, but every darkened doorway seemed to mock our desperate search, leaving only echoes in their wake. "Think he could be elsewhere?" I asked, grasping for any glimmer of hope. "I don't know," she murmured, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, fatigue creeping in around her eyes. "But he has to be somewhere. We can't." Just before she could finish, I spotted a flicker of movement in the park. "Wait," I said, stopping in my tracks, my heart lifting slightly. "What about the bench behind the fountain? He used to sit there and think. I know we've checked there before, but let's try again." "It's worth the hope," Lydia agreed, her voice steadying. We hurried toward the fountain that gurgled softly, surrounded by the shadows of towering trees. And then we saw Hima's silhouette framed by the faint glow of the moonlight. Nathaniel sat hunched over on the bench, the weight of the world heavy on his shoulders. My breath caught as I observed the muted way his fingers brushed against a crumpled piece of paper in his lap. "Nathaniel?" I called out, the sound breaking the silence like a fragile whisper through the night. He looked up, a mix of surprise and weariness painting his features. "What are you doing here?" His voice was a mere echo of the man I had come to know, laden with unanswerable questions. "Lydia and I were worried about you," I responded, stepping closer with trepidation, feeling the raw energy that surrounded him. "You didn't show at the office, and he just needed some time," he interrupted, tension radiating off him. "Time for what?" Lydia urged, her hands on her hips. "You're not alone in this, Nathaniel. You need to let us in." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling heavily. "It's complicated," he murmured, his eyes flicking between us, searching for kindness and yet haunted by his own burdens, as if he were caught singing a song played in a minor key. "I know," I reassured quietly, taking a seat across from him. "We all have our complexities. But you don't have to shoulder them by yourself. Please, just let us help." The silence hung heavy, and my heart galloped as I willed him to trust me, to open up the chamber of his heart that felt so painfully far from my grasp. Then he reached into his pocket, pulling out the crumpled note, and handed it to me. For a second, I thought it might be an explanation, a revelation that held the power to pull us together. Instead, the paper trembled as I took it from him, revealing a hastily scribbled list, a compilation of names with the letters mostly scratched out, except for one Carter. "Who's Carter?" I asked, fear coiling into the very marrow of my bones. Nathaniel averted his gaze, pain flashing across his features. "A mistake from my past. One I can't seem to outrun. Yet every trace seems to bleed into my present." My heart raced, a cascade of realization washing over me. The stranger from the café, the one who had intersected our lives, wasn't merely an encounter of chance. He was part of Nathaniel's past, a shadow lurking at the edges, poised to eclipse our fledgling connection. Lydia leaned forward, urgency in her voice. "What happened with Carter?" Why are you carrying this burden alone? He hesitated, and in that stillness, I saw the blueprint of fear etched across his features. This wasn't just a matter of running or hiding, it felt deeper, a tender wound that threatened to bleed through the fabric of his life. Then, just as Nathaniel appeared poised to share his truth, the distant sound of sirens pierced the quiet night, a stark reminder of the clock ticking down on whatever turmoil awaited him. "Help me," he suddenly implored, his voice a trembling whisper, as if admitting defeat for the first time in his life. The moment hung tenuously in the air, thick with emotion, as I exchanged a glance with Lydia, an unspoken agreement. We would face whatever storm lay ahead, not just for Nathaniel, but for the life we all hoped to reclaim, together. But as Nathaniel leaned into our resolve, I felt the cold tendrils of fate creeping ever closer, the reality that past shadows might not easily fade, and that my own truths might also be brought into the light. Could our journey truly lead to healing, or would it only further unravel the fragile tapestry I had dared to weave? With a deep breath, I nodded, ready to face whatever came next, only to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from behind. My heart plummeted as I turned to see who was looming. The last person I expected stood there, his presence throwing the already precarious situation into chaos, and with that, the night transformed into an uncertain horizon, laden with the promise of secrets waiting to be unveiled. The figure emerging from the shadows wasn't just anyone, it was Carter himself, his silhouette cutting through the murky veil of the night like a knife. I felt the world around me shrink, the cold air thickening with unspoken tension. Nathaniel stiffened beside me, eyes widening in disbelief and horror, as if he had just seen a ghost he thought long buried. "Carter," Nathaniel murmured, disbelief wrapping itself around his voice. "What are you doing here? Guess it was only a matter of time before I found you, huh?" Carter replied, his tone eerily casual, as if he hadn't just materialized out of nowhere to disrupt everything Nathaniel had been trying to escape. My heart raced, beating loudly in my chest as Lydia's eyes darted between the two men, shock plastered across her face. I positioned myself between them instinctively, ready to shield Nathaniel from whatever chaos Carter had brought with him. "You need to leave," I demanded, my voice firm despite the surge of uncertainty coursing through me. Carter's eyes flicked toward me, a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. "And what if I don't? You think you can protect him?" He took a step closer, and the air grew painfully charged with unspoken confrontations. "The past isn't something you can just will away." "Then let's talk about it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever it is, it doesn't have to happen here. Nathaniel deserves more than this." Nathaniel's face twisted as if he were wrestling with demons that had followed him into the present. "No, I can't," he started, shaking his head fervently. "You don't need to get involved," but I could see the tremor in his hands, the way his breath quickened listening to Carter's taunts. "I'm already involved." "We're all involved," I asserted, keeping my gaze on Carter, unwavering despite the storm of emotions brewing behind Nathaniel's eyes. The conflict between loyalty and fear. Lydia, her shoulders squared, finally broke in. "You need to stop this. Whatever happened, it doesn't define you, Nathaniel. You're not that person anymore." Carter let out a low chuckle, eyes glinting with a mix of malice and amusement. "Oh, but isn't that the fun of it? Everyone has a past, don't they? Isn't that why he's failing to own his future?" He leaned casually against a tree, arms crossed, as though the confrontation was entertaining than threatening. I felt Nathaniel tense beside me, battling shadows bigger than our current confrontation. His silence was a storm churning beneath the surface, and I wondered if it would leak out in all the wrong ways. Would he take flight from this moment, or would he finally choose to fight back? The steady flow of sirens began to fade into the background, signaling that time was running out for us. I took a breath, venturing closer to Nathaniel, my hand brushing against his. "You don't have to face this alone," I whispered softly, reminding him that he was not ensnared in the web of his past anymore, not as long as we stood together here. Carter stepped forward, his expression darkening. "You think you can save him? How noble." There was venom in his voice, and with it, a sudden surge of anger, the kind that had once entangled Nathaniel and him too intimately for comfort. "He's still the same man he always was, hiding yet again. No," Nathaniel shouted suddenly, the force of his voice surprising even me. He stepped forward, raw energy radiating from him, as he faced Carter directly. "I'm not that person anymore. I'm done being defined by your mistakes." There was a flicker of something in Carter's eyes, fear, perhaps? Or was it rage? "You think you can simply walk away from the mess you created? It doesn't work like that, Nathaniel." "What mess?" Nathaniel's voice cracked, reverberating with painful resonance. You think dragging me back into your life is going to change anything? What do you even want from me? Suddenly, Carter's bravado seemed to falter, the shadows in his eyes darkening. You owe me, he said, the edge of desperation creeping into his voice. You turned your back on our life, our ambitions. You can't think I'd just let that go. I glanced nervously at Lydia, who nodded encouragingly, her expression a tapestry of belief and fierce determination. You're not alone in this, Nathaniel, she urged. You have us. You can take control of your own story, rewrite it if you need to. But Carter, sensing our united front, took a step toward me, removing his attention from Nathaniel for the first time. And you? Who do you think you are? This won't end well for any of you if you keep meddling. A chill skated up my spine as I floated the idea that he might bring unexpected violence along with his twisted sense of loyalty. Yet I resolved not to back down. You underestimate him, Annas, I replied boldly, the words filling me with a strange certainty. The same might that had once caged Nathaniel was now faltering against the bonds we were weaving together. Run away, Nathaniel, Carter urged, a twisted resolve taking form in his voice. You're not safe here. You think they've got your back? You'll never really escape this life, not with me. Still in that moment, armed with stubborn resolve, Nathaniel took a step toward Carter, narrowing the distance between them. I'm not afraid of you, he claimed, but the undertones of his voice betrayed him, carrying the echoes of fear too deeply ingrained. A standoff ensued, each moment stretched like elastic, teetering on the cusp of collapse. As I watched Nathaniel confront the shadows of his past, I felt every fleeting second pressurize the air around us, each heartbeat anchoring me deeper into a terrifying reality that chaos might soon erupt. And just then, a crack of thunder echoed in the distance, a menacing harbinger of the storm gathering in the sky, a reminder of how precarious our existence had become. Everything was spiraling, the past aligning with the present as revelations hung just out of reach. But Nathaniel didn't move backward, he advanced, illuminating possibilities that lay hidden. This was our momentous chance for truth, a risk for connection bathed in the ghostly light that had veiled his past for too long, and I realized, as the tension swirled ominously, that perhaps everything was about to change, not just for Nathaniel, but for all of us. Would we find the strength to weather the storm, or was our resolve too fragile to withstand the tempest threatening to break us apart? With that thought seeping into my bones, I braced for what lay ahead, hoping that the unexpected power of kindness would somehow lead us through. But as thunder rumbled again, that hope strangely wavered. This might just push us beyond the brink of salvation, where shadows threatened to engulf the light, and somebody would have to decide once and for all who they truly wanted to be. The rain began to fall, soft at first, a gentle pitter-patter that quickly escalated into a torrential downpour, drowning out thoughts and words alike. It washed over the scene, turning the world into a blurred watercolor of motion and emotion. Each raindrop felt like a reminder of the weight of the past, soaking our clothes, our resolve, and threatening to drown any courage we had mustered. Nathaniel stood firm, his chest heaving with breaths that struck against the chaos and uncertainty swirling around us. Carter's expression morphed into something darker, fueled by the realization that his grip on Nathaniel was slipping. You think the world will accept your newfound bravery? You think you can just push me away and pretend none of it ever happened? His voice broke through the rain, sharp like the crackle of lightning illuminating the inky sky. Yes, Nathaniel said, his voice now a steely whisper. I do. Because the past only has as much power as I allow it to have. Lydia and I exchanged a glance, feeling the same mix of pride and fear for Nathaniel's defiance. For all of Carter's menacing presence, it was Nathaniel's authenticity that began to shine through like a flickering candle fighting against the darkness. A spurt of violent wind swept through the grove, scattering loose branches and making us cling tighter to one another. As the storm raged, I felt a new pull within me, a powerful urge to bridge the divide between Nathaniel and the one person who threatened to unravel him. Without fully thinking, I stepped forward, positioning myself across from Carter, creating a barrier that felt both brave and naive. Carter, you're wrong about him, I said, my voice rising above the storm, spurred by something inside me that demanded to be heard. He's not just some character in your story, he's his own person now. You can't just re-enter his life and expect things to fall back into line. Carter's laughter mingled with the sound of thunder, a cruel mockery of my words. And what do you know of this life? The dreams we built together? You think you can rewrite history? I know, Nathaniel, I countered, the fierceness of my convictions bolstered by the sincerity of my heart. I've seen the man he's become despite you. And I'll fight for him, even if you want. Carter paused, his gaze flickering to me as if testing my resolve. The tension hung like static in the air, an electric charge igniting an unseen battle of wills. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a blinding flash of lightning struck nearby, illuminating the night sky and catching the moment of vulnerability in Carter's features. It was then, in the heat of that storm, that a small glimmer of empathy danced behind Carter's facade. You think him the villain here, don't you? He asked, his tone shifting slightly, a hint of something softer creeping through. You think I did this all on purpose? For an instant, the weight of the storm lifted just a fraction. I could see a strand of hurt woven into his bravado, but it was fleeting. In the same breath, Nathaniel stepped closer, physically placing himself in the crossfire, and interrupted, I don't care what you want from me, Carter. What you did changed me in ways you'll never understand, and I won't let you have that hold over me anymore. A heartbeat passed one filled with the tension of everything left unsaid before Carter's face hardened once more, but I could sense the cracks in his armor. Make your choices, then, he hissed, his arrogance seeping back as the storm continued to rage around us. But just know that when the clouds clear, they will reveal the truth you wish to hide. With that warning, he turned sharply, retreating into the chaos of the storm, leaving behind an echo that felt like a promise and a threat entwined. The violet rain began to wash away the evidence of his presence, but its residue clung to the air, leaving us with an unsettling silence that roared louder than the storm itself. Hesitation flooded back into Nathaniel's body as if grounding him to the earth beneath our feet. The fight hadn't left him entirely unscathed, the shadows still lurking, whispering doubts into his ear. What now? He asked, vulnerability cracking through the tough exterior he fought so hard to maintain. Before I could answer, Lydia chimed in softly, now, we find shelter. But let's not forget what just happened here, what you just accomplished, Nathaniel. You stood up for yourself, for who you want to be. That means everything. Nathaniel nodded, though uncertainty still hung in the air. But what if he comes back? What if I can't hold on to this newfound strength? I reached for Nathaniel's hand, intertwining my fingers with his, grounding him in that moment. You're not alone. Well, figure it out together. One step at a time. As we turned to seek refuge, a sudden flash of light illuminated the dark sky, revealing a figure beyond the treeline, watching us intently. The silhouette seemed familiar, sending a jolt of recognition coursing through my body, panic surging as I squinted through the torrential downpour. Suddenly, a sense of dread seized me. Wait, I stammered, who is that? But Nathaniel and Lydia were already straining to see through the rain, the fear mirrored in their eyes. The figure took a step closer, their features concealed by shadows, but the unmistakable aura wrapped around them sent chills down my spine. As they emerged from the darkness, reality pierced through my heart like a knife because I knew, deep down, that whatever had been brewing in the shadows wouldn't stop until everything we held dear was laid bare. In that moment, the storm didn't just feel like nature's fury, it was a harbinger of the storm that loomed ahead, a reminder that our battles were far from over, and the truth? Well, it had a way of resurfacing, ready to lay our souls bare when we least expected it. The figure stepped closer, and my breath caught in my throat as recognition rushed over me like the storm that had become our world. It was Olivia. But she was different somehow, her presence heavy with gravity, cloaked in an air of urgency that was both unsettling and poignant. Her eyes darted between Nathaniel, Lydia, and me, reflecting a mixture of fear and determination. Olivia? Nathaniel called out, confusion lacing his voice. What are you doing here? I had to find you, she said, her voice barely rising above the wailing wind. There's something you need to know, something that can't wait. I glanced at Lydia, whose expression mirrored my own, a blend of dread and intrigue. Whatever Olivia had come to reveal felt like a freight train barreling toward us, relentless and unavoidable, and just as chaotic as the downpour surrounding us. Not here, I finally managed to say, glancing around at the dank grove. Let's get to shelter first. Having just fought against one storm, I felt ill-prepared to weather another. No, Olivia insisted, shaking her head, her determination fierce even amid the relentless rain. It has to be now. It's about Carter, and everything that happened back then, and what he's planning now. Each word she spoke seemed to peel back layers of fear and confusion that I didn't realize had begun to suffocate us. Carter? What do you mean? Olivia took a deep breath, the urgency in her demeanor palpable. He's not the only one who hasn't changed. There are people in his corner, people who believe in his mission, who want to make sure he succeeds, regardless of the destruction it leaves behind. A sharp chill spread through me, and Nathaniel tightened his grip on my hand, his heart racing as he processed Olivia's words. Lydia cast a worried glance towards the treeline where Carter had disappeared, fear crossing her features. "What are you saying, Olivia? What does this have to do with Nathaniel?" Her gaze shifted back to Nathaniel, and for a moment, she faltered, her emotions dancing across her face, revealing a vulnerability I had never seen in her before. "You have to be careful, Nathaniel. He will come after you again. He won't let go so easily, especially now that you've defied him. He sees you as a threat, as someone who can unravel everything he's built." The weight of her words enveloped us, the tension thickening the air. Nathaniel's resolve seemed to waver, splintering the bravery had momentarily found. Memories of Carter's presence, the toxicity of their past, loomed like a specter, and I saw doubt creep into his eyes. "Does he have followers? Allies?" Nathaniel asked, his voice a whisper lost beneath the roar of the storm, but I could sense the tremors of fear beneath the surface. "Yes," Olivia said, her expression growing more severe. "People who owe him favors, who are willing to do his bidding. He believes that the truth he's convinced himself is right justifies any means. You're not just dealing with him, you may be facing an entire network." As we stood there, rain soaking us to the bone, I felt a shiver run through my spine. It wasn't just the cold, it was the dawning realization that for every step forward Nathaniel took, there could be a dozen steps backward waiting to ensnare him. But then Olivia surprised us all. She stepped closer, her presence demanding attention. "I want to help you. I know how he thinks, and I can get you the information you need to be prepared. But you have to trust me." Her eyes bore into Nathaniel's, a fierce challenge resting within them. The moment hung suspended in time, the storm fading slightly in the background, as if even nature anticipated the outcome. A mixture of emotions coursed through Nathaniel's expression: hesitation, fear, and, surprisingly, hope. He began, but before he could finish, the ground beneath us trembled, sending a shockwave that interrupted the fragile moment. Lydia stumbled back, her hand reaching out to grab Nathaniel's arm for balance. "What was that?" she cried, alarm flooding her voice, and the shake of the earth had a thunderous echo that rang through the trees. Then, without warning, a figure emerged from the shadows again, larger this time, with a chilling intensity that twisted my stomach into knots. It was Carter, flanked by others I could not identify, their intentions cloaked in malice. "I warned you once," he declared, his voice a taunting rumble that cut through the tension like a blade. "You should have listened." My heart dropped, a visceral panic setting in as the realization sunk in. The very act of kindness that had led Olivia to us now threatened to be the catalyst of our undoing. The storm was no longer just a struggle against nature, it had transformed into an impending battle, one that would lay bare not only Nathaniel's past but also his future. The time for sheltering and seeking refuge was gone. Carter's return heralded a new, darker storm, one that would test the bonds we had forged and our decisions in ways we could scarcely fathom. I exchanged a frantic glance with Nathaniel, the courage we had fought to nurture now at risk of being trampled beneath the weight of confrontation. And in that heart-stopping moment, as dread crept into every corner of my mind, I understood what Olivia had tried to warn us about. This wasn't just a battle for Nathaniel's identity or autonomy, this was a fight for survival, where the simple act of kindness had become a weapon, poised against us. The rain began to pelt harder, pouring relentlessly as if the heavens themselves were intent on drowning out the tension brewing between us and Carter. Each drop felt like a small hammer striking my resolve, and I could see the shadows deepening around us, fueled by fear and uncertainty. The storm was a reflection of the turmoil swirling within our hearts. It was a warrior's cry, heralding the chaos that would soon descend. "Carter," Nathaniel said, his voice stronger now, "you don't scare me anymore." But there was a tremor beneath his bravado, a quaking foundation that told a different story. I glanced at Olivia, who looked as if she were caught between wanting to support him and fearing for her own safety. The weight of her decision loomed large, and I absorbed the fragility of our united front. Carter stepped forward, his eyes glinting with cruelty, while his companions moved, closing the distance between us. "You don't get it, do you?" he snapped, the rain collecting at the corners of his mouth as he spoke. "This isn't just about you refusing to follow along. This is about betrayal. You think your little band of misfits can defy me? Think again.
I know your weaknesses, Nathaniel. I felt Nathaniel's grip on my hand tighten as silence stretched, pulling taut like a drawn bow, casting shadows over the warriors we were just beginning to become.
And what will you do now? What's your plan, Carter?
Nathaniel's words ignited a spark of courage, igniting the tension around us. The plan was to teach you a lesson, Carter shot back.
His followers' faces remained hidden beneath hoods, blank and foreboding.
Each one felt like a silent promise of pain, agents of chaos ready to spring into action. That's when a flicker of movement caught my eye, a figure enveloped in running shadows, weaving quickly between the trunks of nearby trees.
What the? Lydia whispered, eyes wide searching for answers. The figure emerged, and my stomach dropped as I recognized him. It was Jacob.
His face was streaked with mud and rain, urgency etched deep into the lines of his forehead. Get back! He shouted, positioning himself between us and Carter.
They're not here just for you, Nathaniel. They're after all of us.
We need to leave now. Carter's expression twisted into disdain.
And you think you can protect them? What a fool.
You have no idea how deep this goes. The only fool here is you, Jacob replied, breathless yet undeterred.
I know the games you've played. I know what you want.
But these people, they're not pawns in your twisted game anymore. As rain mingled with tension, I marveled at the remarkable defiance standing before us. A thread of hope started to stitch itself through the wreckage of despair and doubt. Jacob wasn't a fighter by nature, yet here he was, proving just how powerful loyalty could be in times of desperation. But Carter only laughed, a guttural sound drenched in darkness.
Loyalty? To what end? You think they'll stand by Nathaniel when I make an example of him?
He gestured toward us with a cruel smirk. The implication hung thick between us, and the clamor of thunder underscored his threat. I clutched Nathaniel's hand, trying to lend him strength, feeling the anxiety thrumming between us like a beating heart. Before I could voice my thoughts, Olivia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with untamed resolve.
No! We're not letting you tear us apart anymore. This ends now, she declared, injecting empowerment into the trembling atmosphere.
But before we could regroup or strategize a plan, Carter stepped back, his followers flanking him with a haunting synchronicity.
Let's see what you're made of then, Olivia. You think you understand the game? You know nothing.
His voice thundered as lightning lit up the sky, illuminating the malice in his eyes. Panic clawed at my chest as I watched his followers' fingers twitch toward concealed weapons. The storm raged around us, creating a cacophony that mirrored the passions igniting in our hearts. Just then, a chilling revelation slashed through my mind, a realization rooted in the echoes of the past I could no longer ignore.
Wait. How do you know? My name? I blurted. Why do you keep focusing on us?
Carter's grin widened, an unnerving riddle wrapped in layers of mystery.
Because, darling, it wasn't just Nathaniel who chose to defy me.
You're tied to this story in ways you cannot even comprehend. In that electrifying moment, confusion twisted into horror. I caught Lydia's eye, and the panic we both felt resonated through the fabric of our connection.
A million questions swirled within me. Was there something I was missing? Did I play a role in the shadows of Carter's machinations? And as the rain continued its pounding descent and thunder cracked overhead, an undeniable truth crested like a wave about to crash. Our fight for survival was becoming a tangled web of betrayals, not just in Nathaniel's past, but in my own, too. A war was brewing on a broader scale, one in which none of us were guaranteed safety. As the tension reached a breaking point, I felt time slip into stillness, an electrifying moment where hope clashed violently against despair, and the outcome hung in the balance like a sip of bitter fate waiting to be swallowed. In that heartbeat, Carter raised a fist, and I realized with dawning horror, the storm wasn't just a tempest overhead but the impending storm of everything I had been keeping buried. The echoes around me morphed from dread into something deeper, a threat that threatened to undo us all. The rain fell harder, drenching the ground in a torrent that matched our rising dread. Each rivulet of water mingled with our fears, creating dark pools of uncertainty that threatened to swallow us whole. Nathaniel's hand squeezed mine, his grip coveting my strength as we faced down the embodiment of our worst nightmares. Carter, before we could gather our wits, Jacob moved forward, defiantly radiating courage that felt almost palpable. You want them?
You'll have to go through me first, he roared, a fierce protector donned in mud and rain. The incredible weight of his loyalty hit me square in the chest, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there were whispers of bravery hidden amongst the rubble. Carter sneered, unfazed. He continued to circle us with an insidious glee, dark eyes sweeping over each of us with calculating precision.
How noble of you, Jacob, he mocked. But do you really think you can stand in my way?
You're just running into a storm you can't escape from. The ground shook beneath us, not from the earth but from the ferocity of emotions thrumming within the tangled group. I could feel the fear creeping in, threatening to unspool the protective thread we had woven in our frantic whispers and hushed promises. But I knew now wasn't the time to falter. Hope flickered, fragile but defiant, in the smallest gesture, a hand on a shoulder, a cautious nod of support.
In that moment of chaos, Lydia's voice rekindled my resolve.
We stand together, she declared softly, her eyes scanning the group with a fierce determination that fed into a rising tide of collective strength.
None of us are walking away alone. Well, fight. Well, resist. But Carter wasn't finished.
His eyes burned with dark delight as he leaned closer, practically savoring our discomfort.
So, you all believe you're bound together in this little quest against me? Cute.
He chuckled, and the sound sent shivers down my spine.
But it won't save any of you. You think you can hold on to that false belief of unity?
I'm here to unravel it, piece by piece. The clouds above mirrored his menace, rolling and churning like wild beasts as a gust of wind roared through the clearing. A chill settled over me, resonating in my bones. The fear that threatened to envelop us was vivid, clawing like a beast, wanting nothing more than to tear us apart. I released Nathaniel's hand for a moment to stand taller.
What do you want from us, Carter?
I demanded, my voice rising against the thunder.
What's the endgame here?
We aren't pawns in your sick game, we're humans with our stories. His grin widened, revealing fangs in the guise of malice.
Ah, but that's just it, my dear.
You are not just any Ponzi players in a game bigger than you can possibly fathom. Your stories, your connections, they're precisely my instruments of chaos. As he spoke, my heart clenched, the realization dawning that perhaps I was indeed entangled in more of his web than I ever suspected. It wasn't just Nathaniel's past that had come back to haunt us. Shadows of understanding slithered tantalizingly close to the surface, and I didn't want to confront them. A sudden movement caught my attention, pulling me momentarily away from the swirling storm of chaos. A soft voice broke through the raging tempest, a stranger's voice, carried on the wind.
You must not let fear consume you.
Turning toward the sound, I was surprised to see an elderly woman standing nearby, half hidden under a large tree. She was drenched, her clothes clinging tightly to her frail frame, yet her presence radiated something inexplicably warm amidst the cold, dark night.
How had she made it out here?
Carter, equally startled, narrowed his eyes.
What's this? An old woman trying to save the day?
The woman's gaze pierced through the storm. Kindness exists in the darkest of times, even if it seems fleeting, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. You have each other, and that strength can break down walls made of fear. Remember that. Her words settled like raindrops upon our hearts, holding us tightly in their embrace. The warmth in her eyes reached beyond the chaos,
igniting embers of resilience that hadn't been extinguished.
Without warning, Carter unleashed a wave of frustration.
Silence her. She's irrelevant.
He gestured violently, and I felt the quarrelsome energy shift. Time seemed suspended as the shadows shifted around us, revealing hidden truths in the tight faces of Carter's followers.
Did they too feel the weight of kindness and bravery in opposition to the cruelty we were witnessing?
Beyond pondering that, a sudden flash of realization sent a cold shiver down my spine.
You don't want us for some grander scheme, do you?
I accused, feeling a surge of determination chasing away the shadows of doubt. You crave control because it slipped from your fingers before. Carter's expression twisted, a scowl marred by contempt. You're smarter than I anticipated, he murmured, as thunder rumbled warningly overhead. In that instant, the gravity of my words hung palpably between us, thickening the air. Hope and dread wrestled like wild animals of the spirit, swirling together in a dance as Jacob, Fiona, and Lydia held steadfast, anchored around me. Just then, the sky cracked open with a blinding flash of white light, illuminating not just the chaos but suddenly revealing the memories I'd buried deep. Images flooded my mind, faces, names, experiences, intertwined in ways that sent panic rippling through me. Wait! I shouted, dread blooming within me.
What if I am connected to this after all?
As uncertainty wove itself through the moment, the echoes of my past surged forth, intertwining with the urgency of the present. As my breath caught in my throat, so did the knowledge that the very essence of this storm was tied not solely to Nathaniel's journey but to my own.
I won't let you hurt them,
I declared, though fear clutched at my heart. But as Carter's twisted grin returned, my gut twisted at the realization that perhaps the storm threatening to consume us wasn't solely created by him. Perhaps it had long been birthed from our own Levisa tempest filled with secrets waiting to unravel. The rain continued pouring as thunder growled overhead, marking not just fear but a profound unveiling, conjuring a new wave of desperation. The fight for survival was on, and my heartbeat thrummed with the uncertainty that lay ahead. Just when I thought I had pieced together, the rage within Carter erupted.
You have no idea what you're dealing with, don't you?
The real storm is just about to begin. As his words slammed into me, the shadows around us deepened, promising an upheaval that threatened to drown us entirely. I realized with dread this was merely the start, a drawn breath before the collision of worlds. The storm intensified, a raucous symphony of wind and rain, as if the heavens demanded an offering for the chaos unfolding on the ground. I stood there, heart racing, caught between the fury of Carter and the flickering embers of hope that seemed almost impossible to maintain. Nathaniel, Jacob, Lydia, and Olivia formed a thin line of defiance against the encroaching darkness, but the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest. Each drop of rain felt like an echo of grave consequences, a reminder that the storm wasn't just around us but had seeped deep within our very souls. Carter's glare remained fixed on me, his laughter piercing through the chaos.
You think you're the heroine, don't you?
He stepped closer, a predator sensing the vulnerability of its prey.
You believe in this misguided sense of bravery?
Ill relish in watching your delusions crumble. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming for me to retreat, but instead, I took a step forward, emboldened by the presence of my friends.
No, Carter.
We're here for each other.
Your threats don't hold any power over us anymore.
Each word felt like a rebellion against the fear that wanted to drown me, an assertion that I had the right to choose my own fate. The rain poured down, splattering against the cold ground, but amid the tempest, the elderly woman stood unwavering. Her presence was like a lighthouse, a beacon of hope amidst the swirling chaos. Kindness will always be your weapon against the darkness, she called out, her voice steady as if woven into the fabric of time. Carter scoffed at her. Kindness won't save you when everything falls apart. He swung his arm behind him, and his followers moved forward, eyes darkened with intention, shadows of malice flanking him like darkened clouds. Let's see if your precious bonds can withstand the storm I'm about to unleash, he taunted. I felt the air thicken as they advanced, my heart racing. But then, as if summoned by an unseen force, Nathaniel stepped ahead, his demeanor shifting into a calculated calm.
Enough!
He bellowed, his voice cutting through the shower and the tension alike. You will not drag us back into your depths of despair, Carter.
We will not be puppets nor sacrifices.
We are making our own choices now. Carter froze for a heartbeat, surprise flashing across his features. The shift in Nathaniel was palpable. The boy who had once been shackled by fear now stood firm in the storm, radiating a confidence that demanded attention. But while that flicker of hope ignited a warmth in my chest, I knew Carter was still a storm unto himself. Carter sneered, narrowing his gaze. You've grown bolder, Nathaniel.
But boldness doesn't guarantee safety.
If I can't have you back, I'll make sure anyone who dares to ally with you tastes the bitterness of regret. Let them come. Jacob shouted, his voice ringing out with echoed ferocity. I will stand with Nathaniel, regardless of what you plan. That was when Carter's laughter morphed into something darker.
How sweet. You think that loyalty will shield you from the repercussions of this game? It won't.
I've played it for too long. And then, when our back seemed pressed against the wall, Olivia reached for Nathaniel's hand, her eyes fierce with encouragement. You are not just facing a man, Nathaniel.
You're confronting the truth.
Remember how far you've come and how much you've changed. That conviction rippled around us, a force softening the tension that hung like a fog. The moment became charged with anticipation as a collective breath filled the air, the realization that perhaps we were stronger together than we ever imagined. I stepped closer, enveloping Nathaniel's hand with my own, feeling warmth radiate between us. The gesture, small yet significant, served as a reminder. We were not alone. Together, I vowed tightly, every ounce of sincerity pouring into the words. We stand together. But before we could solidify our resolve, lightning struck, illuminating the darkened sky, casting shadows over Carter's twisted grin.
Together? He echoed mockingly. You foolish children think you can simply come together and face down the whirlwind I conjured. Oh, how naive! With that, he waved his hand, and chaos erupted as the followers descended upon us with calculated precision. I turned towards Nathaniel, fear coursing through me as we braced for the collision. Stay close, I shouted, grounding myself in the unity we had formed in the midst of turmoil. A sudden crash of thunder reverberated through the trees, shaking the very ground beneath us as the first confrontation ignited. We fought with everything we had, but as our connection grew deeper, every clash with the opposing forces made it clearer this was more than just a battle, it was a reckoning. Each strike was a reminder of our intent to protect not just ourselves, but each other. Nathaniel moved with a newfound strength, a graceful dance of defiance that bore the weight of his growth and our mutual commitment to rewriting our destinies, but they were relentless. The rain poured down as if trying to wash away the turmoil in our hearts, amplifying every struggle, every moment we rallied against despair. Then, amid the chaos, the elderly woman stepped closer, her voice breaking through the noise. Remember, your narratives are yours to control. You shaped the destinies before you. In that moment, I felt the tide begin to shift. Carter's companions faltered slightly, confusion flashing across their faces. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there, the crackling of hope chiseling through the weight of despair. Nathaniel took a breath, and with it echoed the memories and strength of every bond we had forged. We pave our paths, he shouted. We'll no longer let you dictate these lives. The standoff stretched, both sides locked in an immutable dance of strength and benevolence. As the rain lashed down like an unrelenting partisan, I caught Nathaniel's eyes, fierce and resolute. For every threat, we rise, I vowed, feeling the warmth of unity encasing us. Then, almost instinctively, our voices melded together, a battle cry that rose above the storm, echoing across the tumultuous backdrop. We choose our own destinies. And in that moment, a shift occurred. It wasn't just around us but within us. Amidst the chaos and the cacophony, light pierced through the darkness, the dawn breaking through the storm. Slowly, piece by piece, the shadows that clung to us began to recede. We stood our ground, solid, circling one another like a constellation. Carter's expression morphed from amusement to anger before confusion painted over his features. No! This isn't how it's supposed to go! He shouted, lashing out in desperation. But it was too late. The cracks had begun to show in the armor head so carefully fashioned over the years, now betrayed by the power of human connection, the unyielding force of kindness that flourished even amidst the stormiest of nights. It's too late for you, Carter, Nathaniel said, his voice still strong. You've lost control. You underestimated the strength of our connections. With those words hanging heavy in the air, the storm finally began to relent, the rain tapering off, and what remained was a calm clarity, the echoes of the past transforming into a quiet resolve. I saw the darkness easing from Nathaniel's eyes, confidence igniting like a phoenix rising from ashes. As the remaining shadows faded, Carter's face twisted in disbelief. But how could you? He stumbled back, disarmed not just by our bonds but by the realization that we wouldn't be mere spectators in a game that had long ago turned against him. That is our power, I said, stepping forward. Your hold is broken, and so is your influence. We choose to create light in the darkest of times. With that, the storm finally ceased. Nature held its breath, and somewhere beyond the horizon, dawn began to break. An unknown warmth washed over me, filling me with the hope of a new day. As we turned to each other, the community we forged amidst the chaos glowed like a sunrisey brilliant display of what connection can do, shattering the chains of fear and doubt. And in that precious moment, as the air cleared and the sun slowly emerged, I realized we weren't just survivors of a storm, we were architects of a new beginning. Now, standing in the soft glow of the dawn, I knew one final truth: for each dawn bears its own promise. It's not the storms we weather that define us but how we rise anew in their wake.